you so much for joining on what is such an amazing end of summer's evening, I think. So well done for being here. So so my name's Lauren Eyles, and I manage our National Beach Clean and Survey Programme at the Marine Conservation Society. So we are a national charity, and in general, we fight for a cleaner, better protected, healthier ocean, which we can all enjoy. So we work on lots of different areas, and of course, pollution and beach cleaning being one of those. So I wanted to spend sort of the next 45 minutes to an hour just running you through our beach clean and survey program, which is called Beachwatch, how we use the data that's collected, because of course it's not just about cleaning beaches, it's about collecting the information as we go along, how to become a Beachwatch volunteer, the different options in volunteering for beach cleaning, um, our new, very new up and coming beach cleaning app due to be launched this week, actually. So really exciting. And then sort of finishing up on recording and submitting marine litter data and how that works. But yeah, any questions, I can pick those up at the end. So why beach clean at all? I mean, I guess I don't need to tell you in the room the amazing marine wildlife that we have here in the UK. We have some amazing things, from turtles to sharks, jellyfish there, seahorses, some amazing stuff. And unfortunately, it's all being impacted by the marine pollution and plastics that are entering into the marine environment that ironically we're putting there. So there's a huge impact to marine wildlife. In fact, about 8 to 13 million tons of plastic enter our oceans every single year, and about 99 kilos of that plastic waste is generated by one person in the UK every year. So it's a staggering amount that is entering this environment, and unfortunately marine wildlife is being impacted by either obviously ingesting the litter or becoming entangled in it. But it's not just the wildlife that's impacted. We are being impacted by it as well. I mean, of course, it doesn't look very nice to go to the beach to find lots of litter, but unfortunately, it is moving through the food chain, and something called microplastics, which I'm sure again you're very aware of, is becoming a huge problem in in the UK and worldwide. And it's something that I think that I've really noticed and witnessed from the 10 years I've been working with MCS and running this program. I think 5 years ago, microplastics weren't so prevalent. They weren't so sort of visible. But I think that now it's such an area which is well understood and well known by lots of people, which is fab. But I think we're noticing more and more of these microplastics as well. And in fact, a study from Exeter University a couple of years ago now studied 50 animals of 10 species of whales, dolphins, and porpoises, and they found microplastics in the stomachs of all of those animals that they were researching. And then, so that's the huge impact to the marine wildlife. But to us as seafood consumers, if we are ingesting about 11,000 particles a year. So it has huge impacts to us, as well as these amazing marine wildlife that we can find in our waters. So Beachwatch, which is our beach cleaning program, was born in 1994, so quite a while ago. It's a citizen science beach cleaning program, and obviously the aim of it is to get volunteers, people to come and help us to not only clean the beaches, because that's obviously really important, but also to record what we're finding. And that's what's very different to Beachwatch, as opposed to other programs and projects that are are out there at the moment, because many of them just focus on picking up the litter, which is great, but it's a very much a temporary measure. We need to know what it is that we're finding, how much of it we're finding, so we can use that as evidence for, to create positive change. So the project is a year-round project, and it engages people of all kinds of backgrounds, all ages, and all of these people are either organising beach cleans or just turning up on ones that are already organised, and going along and having a really lovely, fun time. And all the data that's collected is submitted back into our database, where, like I say, we've got 27 years worth of data that we can look at to look at different trends and different patterns for marine litter, but not only where it's being found, but from where it's all coming from as well. As part of the project, so it's a year-round project, but as part of it, we have a flagship event called the Great British Beach Clean in September, which some of you may have heard of or even taken part in yourself already. But it's over September, and it's actually now a week-long event, or just over a week actually, and that's really fab, because it means that more people can get involved, basically, to help us to collect more data as well. So we generally have about 500 beach cleans that take part, and like I say, people can either organise their own events, or they can invite volunteers to come along, or keep them private as well. So this year, the Great British Beach Clean runs from Friday the 17th to Sunday the 26th of September. So really not far away, coming up really, really close, about 10 days away from the start of it. So if you like what you hear, think that, yeah, that sounds great, I can do that, then please do get in touch with us, and I'll talk about it a little bit more later on, of how you can do that and the steps that you might take. So pre-COVID, we had about, and following Blue Planet 2, actually, that was a huge driver for engagement for us for the Beachwatch programme, and particularly the Great British Beach Clean, because I think many people watched that programme and it just sparked something within people, and it turned on a light almost, I think, and suddenly people really wanted to take part in beach cleans across the UK, across different organisations, to really help and do their bit. So following that, we had about 10 to 17,000 volunteers who took part in this kind of this special event. Obviously last year was a little bit more challenging and tricky, but we hope that this year we're able to get more and more people cleaning beaches, and helping to clean beaches and collect the data as well, and really hope that you can be part of that too. As a response to COVID last year, and knowing that people still had to really stay local, we launched a Source to Sea survey as well, which is linked to the Great British Beach Clean. It's something that isn't completely new to us, because we've worked on this topic before, because we recognise that a lot of the litter that we find on beaches, in fact about 80% of it originates from the land. So we really wanted, it's something that we want to start monitoring more, but it's also something that we recognise that people couldn't get to the beach if there were many restrictions in place, and we wanted to create an event in such a challenging time that allowed everybody to get involved, and it didn't just mean that people who lived close to the sea were able to do that. So this year we've chosen around 14 items to record as part of this really simple Source to Sea sort of litter quest survey. And those are generally linked to ongoing campaigns or items that we'd like to monitor a little bit more. So of course, PPE is one of those items. And as well as things like glass bottles, sort of different beverage containers, metal drinks cans, polystyrene cups, paper cups, so things that we want to start to understand more about, look at the sort of the data that we're finding inland as well as on our beaches. The Great British Beach Clean is not only a national event in the UK, but it's also a global one. So it's a really, really exciting project, an event to be part of, because the UK are the coordinators for a project in America called the International Coastal Cleanup, which is coordinated by the Ocean Conservancy. And as part of this event, up to or just over 100 countries around the world all take part in this. It's always held on the third weekend of September every year, and that's exactly why when we launched Beachwatch all those years ago, that's why it was always during those timings in September, so we could link up with this international project, because of course we need to understand and look at litter on a worldwide scale and not just on our own island, because obviously litter travels, it doesn't have any boundaries. So, collaborative working, not only, sort of close by, but also across seas is really, really vital. And it gives us a really interesting global snapshot of the marine litter issue as well. So for the Beachwatch programme, we have quite a strict methodology, and then I guess that's another thing that kind of sets it aside, is that it's really robust, it's really scientific, and obviously, allows volunteers within the citizen science to get involved. So we survey 100 meters of beach, and you can just see there on the diagram sort of what that looks like. So it's 100 meters sort of across the beach, lengthways. And we record 100 meters because it's likely that about 90% of all litter types are found or will be found in that distance. And it also obviously standardizes distances. So we're able to compare data around the UK and Europe. And it also gives us regular surveys over time. And that's really, really vital, because that allows us to look at trends in marine litter as well. And yeah, just so you can see there on the length is 100 meters, but the width varies because we go from the strand line, which is obviously the line there on the diagram where the high tide last reached, and then we survey to the back part of the beach. So depending on where you are in the UK, that distance will vary quite considerably. And the back of the beach will vary as well. So you might have a sand dune, which will dictate where you survey to. It might be a sea wall. It might be a road. So the width of the beach varies, but that's not something that we include in our scientific surveys and analysis, because there's so much variation in it. So it is really important on the 100 meters. We do get asked a lot if people can survey less than 100 meters. Now, it is a tricky one. We do really encourage people to do the 100 meters, but we do also acknowledge that sometimes that's just not possible, because beaches are either smaller than that, or we do find on smaller sections or on beaches there is just too much litter to really do a scientific and accurate survey for 100 meters. So yeah, so it is possible. The minimum distance that we would accept is 10 meters for any survey, but 100 is obviously what we would recommend. And also, when I say regular surveys over time, that means doing one survey per season, and that gives us a really good picture and indication of the litter that we're starting to see on that particular 100-meter section, which is really good. So what do we do with all this data? We have a lot of data in our database, which is used for many purposes. Of course, we use it a lot within within policy change. So our data was used as a supportive evidence to introduce the 5p bag charge. Way back when it was first introduced into Wales in 2011. And since then, we've seen more than a 60% decrease of plastic bags on our beaches. So it really, really does make a difference that this data that we're able to provide as evidence that, you know, things are still really bad. You know, we all know that they are. We all see it, you know, all the time. But unless we have this evidence, we can't say, you know, that it is or it isn't. You know, we need to have that evidence to prove, you know, that things are a problem, or that things are looking up, and things are making a real difference. We've also been campaigning for an inclusive and comprehensive deposit return scheme across the UK, and that's really to tackle the drinks containers problem. And I guess thanks in part to our litter data, that the Scottish Government is set to bring in a deposit return system into July in 2022. And of course, we're now responding to many consultations in Wales and England. But again, using all of this amazing data that our amazing volunteers collect, to evidence that, yeah, we need it across the UK, and not just Scotland alone. We've also used it to back up the voluntary removal of single-use plastic cotton bud sticks as well. So there are many, many reasons and many ways that we can use this information. We also use it for public awareness campaigns. So particularly with our Great British Beach Clean data, over the years, we've looked at, you know, particular problem items. So, you know, I remember one year where dog poo in bags was a particular problem. So we did a really big push on that. We've used it for lots of other things to show to the public, you know, that a lot of the litter that we find comes from you. About 40% of everything comes from us, from either leaving it on the beach or it being blown from sort of nearby bins. So that's something that we can do and use with the data, is really highlight these issues to the public, and highlight why they're a problem, and more importantly, I guess, what people can do to change and to make a difference. And again, I think, you know, now people really have that drive and that passion to make that change, whereas, you know, when I sort of first started 10 years ago, it was quite different, I think. But people really do have that now, which is really lovely to see. I mean, I sort of go to beaches now, and people are coming up to me and telling me about litter and why it's important and what we should or shouldn't be doing. Whereas 5 years ago, it was the complete opposite, and people were, you know, sort of scratching their heads and wondering what we were doing. So it's really, really lovely to see that change in, you know, such a short time. We also recently analysed 5 years worth of data. I mean, it was no surprise that small plastic and polystyrene pieces were the top item found across that period, and is generally the top item that we find for most of the surveys and the analysis that we run. It's these tiny microplastics, small plastic polystyrene pieces that obviously once were a large item in the ocean, but over time and many, many years, they've broken down into smaller and smaller pieces, until we just don't know what they are. And I mentioned that we source where everything comes from, and a lot of it obviously comes from the public, but the other high proportion is just non-sourced, which means that we just don't know where it would have come from, and unfortunately, yeah, means that it's been floating around in the ocean, for many, many years. So I mentioned about PPE, and unfortunately, obviously, that's something that we've started to record now, and try to understand a little bit more about, following the pandemic. So last year we started to collect data on PPE for the first time, and extended monitoring inland for the source to sea survey that I mentioned before. And yeah, the results were staggering, with nearly 70% being found inland, on all of those cleans, and about 30% on beaches. And we do expect that figure to increase over the next few years, because I think we're definitely going to witness a lag time with PPE not making its way fully into the marine environment yet. So the figure there, the high figure that we're finding inland, on streets, in parks, in rivers, I think that litter will eventually make its way to the ocean, particularly in more coastal areas, but we're just not seeing that impact yet. So it's something that we're very much keeping an eye on. And this year, we're actually officially adding PPE to our recording forms. So it makes it much easier for people to record, and we get really accurate data that we can start really sort of monitoring what's going on, not only on a UK level, but per country as well. So this is a sort of a general look at litter in the UK, and you can see there from the top graph that it really does fluctuate. So we always say that this is very much a snapshot over time. It used to be sort of a 4-day long event, and now it's just over a week. But from when we started there in 1994 until last year in 2020, so it does very much go up and down. But we have started to see, I mean, it has started to decrease, but it's very hard to kind of say what that is, because of course COVID meant that we had fewer people taking part, fewer beach cleans, so we weren't able to get a much of an accurate picture for those years. So I think it will take sort of a couple more years to see what that trend is doing. Over time. And then I was mentioning where it all comes from there. So you can see that nearly 30% there, these are the results from last year. So nearly 30% comes from the public, and a huge 51 non-source there. And I think that is a direct impact of microplastics just being on the rise, or potentially being just more visible, but people being more aware that they're there, and recording them as well. So fishing litter is always around sort of 9 to sort of 12%. SRD, so these are things that people throw down their toilets, so sanitary products, household items, that kind of stuff. So they end up on beaches and in rivers, because in periods of heavy rainfall, our systems can't deal with all of this excess water. So everything is released via a combined sewer overflow, and obviously everything that's thrown down the toilet with it. So that's why we find cotton bud sticks and wet wipes, sometimes in their hundreds. And that's generally because there is one of these combined sewer overflows fairly close by. So our data set is recognised as, like I say, being really robust, and it's used by governments and academics to evidence litter in the UK, or to investigate different topics of interest. So we work with a few different universities actually, and we hope to work with more in the coming years as well. But one example was back last year, and we worked with Exeter University to look at litter levels within marine protected areas in England, using 25 years worth of our Great British Beach Clean data, which was a really lovely project to be part of, because it's really nice to sort of bring the two together, because of course marine protected areas are something that we also work on at MCS, and something that's obviously rising so has risen in over the last few years, with the amount of areas now that we're seeing protected out in our oceans. But then also kind of combining that with our litter data and looking at the correlation. So it was really interesting, and the research showed that there was no difference in litter from within an MPA or out of. But yeah, I mean, which kind of makes sense. I mean, marine protected areas have no physical boundaries, so to protect them from any potential impacts of litter, we do need to take very much a whole system approach and reduce the overall amount of litter being released into the environment. But long-term data from Beachwatch was vital evidence in helping to understand the problem. And the MPAs don't necessarily protect important habitats and species, which is an even more powerful message to really work towards stopping litter at the source, and obviously where it's all coming from. So, how do you become a volunteer with us to help us to collect this brilliant information that is really, really powerful and we can use to obviously change the situation around? So, getting started, and we've actually just launched, well, fairly recently, a new website. So it's really, really simple. And there are just 4 steps that takes you through the process. So the first thing that you need to do is to become an MCS volunteer on our website. And there's the link there of how you can do that, or you can just Google MCS and then go through the links to becoming a volunteer. So there are many, many ways to get involved. So once you are a volunteer, you'll have your own sort of personal dashboard. And this will allow you to kind of manage all of your volunteering activity with us, not just beach cleaning. It could cross over into getting involved with our education programme, or perhaps doing some seaweed surveys as well, because this project is obviously a citizen science project very much linked to litter, whereas we have other citizen science projects which are linked to collecting data and information on seaweeds. So there are lots of ways to get involved, but this kind of brings you to the sort of the Beach Clean landing page, as it were, and there's lots of information here. So different routes of finding out specific information about the Great British Beach Clean, how to become an organizer, how to find a beach if you just want to turn up as a volunteer. The source to sea survey that I mentioned, if you don't live very close to the sea, or if you just can't get to the sea during the Great British Beach Clean, it's a really fantastic way to still get involved in such an amazing event, and help us to collect some information about different litter types as well. The importance of the data that we collect, some obviously COVID safety guidance, and then the bottom right there on the useful guides and resources is really, really important, because that kind of gives you everything that you need to get going and to get started with all your recording forms and guides on how it all works. So this one, particular one, is all about finding a beach clean. If you just want to volunteer and turn up and really help out. So this is just a really simple tool where you can type in your town name, where you live or postcode, and search around a particular distance. And you can also look at a particular date range there as well. So if you wanted to search around the Great British Beach Clean from the 17th to the 26th of September, then that's something that you can do, and it will then bring up all of the events that are happening sort of locally to you, or with however whatever the distances that you've selected. And then all that does is takes you through to a page which gives you all of the details, exactly where the survey is taking place, meeting points, what to bring, all of those kind of details. And then because you're already signed up as a volunteer, you can just click the sign up button, and that's all good to go. And it will then display on your personal dashboard as an event that you are signed up to go to, and you will receive reminders that that's the event as well, and it might be coming up in a couple of days' time. The other route is organising a beach clean, and as I mentioned, there's a really simple 4-step process for how you go about that. So you would just go on to select organising a clean. you would select your location. So of course, we've been running this program for such a long time that we have many beach stretches that are 100 meters within the system already. So it's looking to see whether that stretch exists already, in which case you can obviously set up an event for that particular location. But if it doesn't, then don't panic, because you can set up a new beach stretch. And again, just go through, the system will take you through the process of how to do that. And it's really quick and simple. And then you choose a date and time. And obviously we recommend that you plan your beach cleans around 2 hours after high tide. I mean, of course, if you live near the coast, or you know a particular stretch really well, then you'll know what's safe and what's not. But that is, that's the general guidance if you don't. So it's choosing a date and time that really fits around the tides and the location that you're going to. Setting up the event page, basically, which will kind of give your volunteers all of the information they need to know about your event. So like I say, where to meet, maps, all that kind of stuff, and what to bring. But you can, of course, make your events private as well. So we still need to know that the events are happening, because it allows us to stop any clashes. So still go through the process of setting up an event. But if you select private, then it won't show as a public event on our listings. But you can share it with people. So they can, if you just wanted family members to come, for example, you can share it with them. And yeah, keeps it all private. And then the other thing is that when you come back to your dashboard, it will show your event, and all you have to do then is click on that, and that takes you through the process of submitting data. And then the summary, there's just a few things that you have to do as part of the process to run these events, and to be covered by our insurance. So one of those is getting permission from the landowner. And sometimes that's really simple. It's just identifying who that landowner is. Generally, it's the council, and that's a really good starting place. If it's not the council, then it will be the National Trust, or it could be a private landowner as well. But if you start at the council, they can put you in touch or give you hints to who it might be if it's not them. So yeah, so getting in touch with the owner, and then filling out a risk assessment as well. And those two kind of go hand in hand really, because whoever owns the beach will most likely want to see a risk assessment before giving you that permission. So it's worth filling out a risk assessment before you kind of go through that process. When you set up at your event through the website, obviously you have to kind of do these last sort of checks, and say that you've done them before obviously you want to publish your event, because of course you don't want to publish your event if you haven't quite got permission, and then later down the line people have signed up and there's a problem with the permission. I mean, you have to let everybody know that they can't go to that one anymore. So yeah, so it's really useful to go through that process. And there's the guides and the resources that I showed you on the sort of the Beach Clean homepage. That is where we have like a risk assessment template where we've done literally most of the work for you. So all you need to do is take that template. It does list it as you go through these 4 steps, but it's also in the resources area as well, just in case you didn't get to that bit. It also saves everything as a draft event as well. So as you're going through this process, don't worry if you haven't got everything lined up and set up before you go through creating an event. It does save everything as a draft. You can then go away, get your permission, do all the risk assessment stuff, come back and then submit your event once you're happy that everything's good to go. Yes, but yeah, we have these templates which hopefully makes the process really simple and easy for you. But of course, we can't identify every risk that's on every beach, on every event. So the template's there, and please do use that. But it's really important that you obviously do a check on the day of your clean, and include anything extra on the risk assessment, and then provide that in your briefing to your volunteers as well. There's just a few things to be aware of. Oh yeah, I've gone through that, haven't I? So risk assessments, getting permission, and then obviously preparing your paperwork as well. So there, obviously risk assessments is a really important part of that process, but there are some other bits and pieces which we would ask you to do. So for example, if anybody attends the beach clean that is under 16, then we require parental consent from those people, and for their parent or guardian or carer to be with them. So there are some other forms like that that you would need to sort of print out and take along with you, in case people who are under 16 do come along. But you can look again on your dashboard. If you've created an event, you can click on that event that's all set up, and you can start to see all of your volunteers that are registered against that event. And if it looks like there's a family group, then you can, contact them ahead of time, and potentially send them the form as well, to avoid doing it on the day. So yeah, so there is correspondence obviously with your volunteers. You can get in touch with them to ask or look at anything that you need to. We also have the COVID guidance as well, and that's again really important to take note of that and make sure that you include that as well. So obviously restrictions have been massively relaxed, particularly in England, but we are still being really, really cautious, and advising our volunteers to still try and maintain social distancing, to notify people that they shouldn't come to the event if they're waiting for a PCR test, or of course they're displaying any symptoms, and all the rest of it. So that is something that we still are taking quite seriously, and that we are advising all of our volunteers to include in their sort of safety briefings ahead of the events. So the survey form looks a little bit like this. So it looks really quite daunting to begin with, but it's not once you kind of get used to it, and you will find that you'll start to collect and monitor very, very similar items. So it's a little bit blurred, but you'll see on the left-hand side there is the largest category. So it's all split into these categories. So plastic and polystyrene is the largest. As I mentioned, plastic and polystyrene is the sort of the highest lit item that we find across all of our surveys. Particularly the plastic pieces. Plastic and polystyrene overall as a category accounts for about 60%, 60 to 70%. So yeah, it is pretty large. But yeah, you will find mostly the small sort of plastic pieces, sort of different little bits of fishing lines, nets. We do find a lot of the public items as well, so straws, the caps and lids found off bottle tops. Yeah, so you will start to get used to it, and then you've got rubber, cloth, paper and cardboard, wood, and so on. Everything on the form is listed alphabetically, so it's really easy to find, and it's worth, when you're sort of giving your briefings to volunteers, to run through this form and just kind of point out any kind of key items, particularly if it's a beach that you know quite well and you know for sure that you're going to find lots of fishing litter or lots of cigarette butts. So it's a really good idea to point those out to people. So when you get to the beach, so you've organised all your events and you get to the beach, So everyone will start turning up at your meeting point that you've specified, and that's when you give a briefing to everybody. And that's one of the documents. Again, we've got like a briefing guide within our resources area that you can print out as a really useful kind of, you know, tick list almost as you go along. So it kind of gives you a little bit of background to Beachwatch, why it's so important that, you know, we're collecting this data, and then obviously go into the specifics of the methodology and the recording form, and what people need to do. But yeah, everything's all there for you again to try and make it really, really easy in the resources area. So yeah, so you'll point this out, your groups will start recording and monitoring all of the litter. You'll come back together and collect all these sheets in, because what you'll do then is collate them all into one summary, and that will include not only the litter data, but also a summary on things like what the weather was doing. Did you find any plastic pellets? So the nurdles that are the kind of the starting life of anything plastic, and yeah, the amount of volunteers that have taken part, the number of bags you've collected. So very much a summary of the event as a whole, and then all of the litter data as well, and that's all collated by the organizer of the event. However, this week, as I mentioned, marks a really, really exciting milestone for the programme, in that we are launching an app this coming Wednesday. So this is something that we've wanted for a really, really long time, and it's going to, well, help on lots of different levels. But the form that I was showing you, instead of having to collate those sheets together, and if you have, you know, we can have up to 200 people on a beach clean, so you could have, you know, like 30 of these sheets, because you'll give your briefing, and then however many volunteers you have will then kind of separate off into groups, and within those groups, each group will have a recording form, and you know, a couple of people will be picking up litter and somebody else holding a bag. But at the end of the clean, it can take quite a long time actually to collate these forms together, particularly if you have quite a few. You know, on average, I'd say it can sometimes take between 1 to 2 hours to put all of this data together. So this app, we're really excited about it because it means that it will kind of cut out a lot of that admin, which is always a positive thing. So yeah, so it's coming on Wednesday. So it will mean again that you can create an account on the app, and it will then list all of your beach cleans that you are organising or that you're signed up to go along and help at. And then it will give you some information on obviously where that survey is, the date and start time, and then a big button there where you can click on to start your survey. And then it obviously allows you to exactly like the form, but on the app, categorize and itemize all of the litter items that you're finding. So yeah, so it's really, really exciting. That's coming this Wednesday and will be obviously all in place for the Great British Beach Clean in 10 days' time. So yeah, so another reason to get involved. But generally, whether you're using a form or an app, there are some sort of golden rules with recording litter, and how to go about it. So the best thing to do once you do find something is look at the material and what it's made of. So if it's plastic, obviously go to the plastic category. If it's paper, go to that one. Sometimes you'll obviously find something that's got more than one material, and if that's the case, then go with the majority. So once you find your category that you've obviously identified as your litter, you then obviously pick, if you can find it listed within the app or on the recording form, then you go obviously pop it in there. But if you can't, then you can record it under other. So at the bottom of the form, there's an other category as well. So you can pop it in there and specify what it is that you found and how much of it you found as well. And then we collect that on the other side. I forgot to say that we also record things like unusual items as well, and you can pop those and record those. We record if there's any pollutants on the beach as well. And yeah, and if you find any animals that are entangled in litter too. And it's all about obviously picking up and recording man-made litter. So anything natural we leave on the beach. And I always say to people, if you find like wood, for example, you would only pick it up if it's got anything unnatural on it, like bits of paint or nails, for example. But everything natural we leave, and also sort of fruit peelings as well. We do find a lot of fruit peelings, and also tea bags. And so we would of course remove those because they're not supposed to be on the beach really, but we wouldn't record them on the forms. And also, I mean, as part of sort of the role of being an organizer, and taking that little bit more responsibility, is helping others, because like I say, with the recording form or even using the app, it can take people, sort of not a huge amount of time, but sort of 10 to 20 minutes to kind of get to grips with recording and where things go. So it's a really nice thing to be able to walk around, not only have a chat with people, and you often have really nice conversations with people who are really like-minded to yourselves, but also helping them with categorizing the things that are being found. There are a few sort of confusion items that it's also useful to point out, particularly in your briefing at the beginning. And those are the difference between cotton bud sticks and lolly sticks. So cotton bud sticks are much kind of thinner, and they have notches on the end where the cotton wool was once in place. Whereas the lolly sticks are much thicker, and generally don't come in lots of different kind of colours as well. So that's one that's often confused. And then also angling line as well. So we have an item on the form and the app, which is angling line, which is obviously the really, really thin angling line that's used, but that's often confused with some of the string and cord items that we have. So yeah, again, it's just kind of walking around groups, having a chat with them, and helping them to try and accurately record some of these litter items as well. Because this year has very much been a year of amazing developments and updates to the programme. So like I say, we've got a new website, we're due to have a new app as well. Yeah, so it's we used to have like an identification guide, where you could give that to people, and that kind of helps them if you're not there. And it's something that we will be looking at, but we haven't quite got it yet. But yeah, that's something that will hopefully be coming to, again, just ensure consistency of recording, and helping our amazing volunteers out who are organising these events for us, but also our volunteers on the day as well. So here's just a few things there. The cotton bud sticks on the right, so you can see there that they do really come in quite a variety of colours, and that you can just about make out, hopefully, the notches on the ends too. And then the image on the top left there, is the inside of a shotgun cartridge, and these are quite common on beaches actually, particularly in different areas. And I think it puzzles a lot of people. I think it puzzled me for quite a while. I was like, why are we finding these? And in some places coastally, you do have sort of shooting ranges where these might pop up. But where you don't, it can be a little bit strange. But they do appear because cruise ships often fire them, as part of their cruises. So they'll fire fire shotguns on cruise ships, and then these inner sort of shells will obviously end up in the ocean, and then they float off onto beaches as well. So just quite an interesting one. And then the one on the bottom there is a wet wipe, often really confused with sort of tissue, and particularly if it's been floating in the ocean for some time, it can become quite degraded and really quite difficult to identify. So that's one to look out for too. And like I say, at the end of the clean, you're sort of weighing up all the rubbish that you're finding. But again, it's mostly the lighter microplastics that you find. A lot of people do come to beach cleans expecting to sort of find the big stuff, and to kind of collect bags full of rubbish. And whilst for some places that might be true, and particularly for the more remote beaches, but for the majority that are quite easily accessible, it is the smaller bits that we're finding. So we're finding a lot of them, but they just don't really weigh much. But we do record the weight, how many bags were found as well. And at the end of the beach clean, as an organizer, it's also a really nice thing to give all your volunteers, if it's an open event, a little bit of a debrief, just to kind of thank them for coming, mention any events that are kind of coming up that you might be doing locally, or that MCS are running as well. And then submitting your results, really, really simple and easy to do. So the app will, of course, do most of the hard work for you, but you might need to add some summary data, and some data from the forms as well, because, I mean, ideally, you would hope that most people will use the app, and all of that data is collated as part of that process for you. But it might be on some events that you've got sort of a mixture of people using the app and the paper forms. So yeah, it's just making sure that all of that data is collated at the end. And at the end of the event, once you submit your results, you are presented with some really lovely sort of summary results, in pie charts to break down, the litter that you found, where it's all come from, and that's something that you can then send to your volunteers as a PDF, as a kind of thank you. This is what we achieved, and it really, really helps to make people feel really valued, and that their time has been really worthwhile as well. And just wanted to sort of nearly end on some of the health and well-being benefits of taking part in beach cleans and surveys at MCS. So since 2017, we have been working together with Plymouth University, to look at how beach cleans affect people as well as our seas, over our annual Great British Beach Clean event in September. So volunteers take part in either a before and after online survey. So we send that a week before and a week after the event, but also one on the beach itself as well, if we're able to do that. Obviously, we didn't run that over last year, because of the obviously COVID issues. But yeah, responses were used to identify any changes by comparing the before and after surveys. So the overall aim of the survey was to look at the effect of beach cleans on experience, on awareness of marine litter, and also behaviour change. And we also wanted to find out if the state of litter on the beach impacts feelings of helplessness, and in turn compromises any of those earlier benefits. But from the data that we've collected over the last few years, these were sort of the main findings that were coming out, that it really did improve the mood and connectedness to the natural environment. Volunteers feel more informed about marine issues and marine litter, and also they intended to act more pro-environmentally as well in terms of their behaviours that they might put into place, following taking part in a beach clean. So it really, really helps with overall health and well-being, as well as everything else. So yes, another reason to come and to join our campaign for change. It really is a fantastic project, one that we've been running for a very, very long time, but we still need more people. We still need more data. We've got lots of amazing plans over the years to come, the years ahead. And yeah, we need more people. And like I say, we've got our great British Beach Clean event coming up in 10 days' time. So it might be a little bit late to organise an event, because generally the permission can take a bit longer than that. But sometimes it can be really quick. So, you know, definitely if you feel like you really want to take part after hearing all about the project tonight, then please do get in touch with the team, because it might be that it might not be too late to organise something. So please get in touch with us, and we can kind of give you some advice and help you through that process. But otherwise, please go onto our website and look at all of the events that we have. We've got, I think, nearly 200 events that have signed up so far. So have a look, see if there's any that take your fancy, that are local to you, or that inspire you to get in your car or on a train and head to the coast in a week or so's time. Then that would be absolutely amazing, and we'd really love you to be part of it. So thank you so much for listening. And yeah, I'll hand back over if there's any questions at all.